Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. Raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
You and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
yes.
A boundary might have been crossed that you right.
That's
so
correct.
Just an example It is a great example. I appreciate that for giving me the example to even work with.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen differences negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Hey. Welcome back or welcome to Working It Out Across Generations, where we talk all things conflict. I'm Dr. Lynne, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Justin.
And we are so thrilled to have you here. I hope you caught our anniversary special.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, we had so much fun. We had special guests, 1 year celebrating, and we just have so many more great topics for you. And today really is a good one. Today is...
Are video games helping or hurting our children? I think this is a very, very interesting topic. Being a gamer myself, having been raised around a whole bunch of gamers of all different age ranges, I really want to stress that, all different age ranges. I think that, there's a lot to be said about, really the role that video games play in development. And especially from two different generations. I'm the gamer and my mom is definitely the parent who, was very strategic about when she introduced gaming, and
because I didn't know anything about it, not in my generation.
And we know that we're not the only ones who have this same exact kind of upbringing and story with gaming as far as how it's landing within our children. So we thought it'd be a very, very timely topic on top of the fact that the holidays are coming up, right? You're going to be shopping for your kids out there. So just giving a good conversation to see if anything will land for you and not influence what you get for your kids, but because I'm always on the side of gaming, get them a video game, they'll love it.
Yeah, and then the kids are always trying to negotiate the expensive one. Oh my gosh!
Always get the expensive one, but we'll get into that later. Exactly, that's exactly what this is about. And so, let's get into it, right? As far as my general thoughts on this topic, I think that video games are doing both. I will be very real, right? As a gamer who's around other gamers all the time, and I have been my entire life. I think that there's so many benefits and so many pros, and especially, for my personal journey and my personal development, that I can attribute to gaming, right? I think that it's made me more social. I think that I've met a lot of great people through gaming. Some of my best friends to this day, right? And I know that I'm not the only one with that story, right? There's plenty of people who, you might see on social media, the gamers who spent 10 years playing a video game together, and then they finally meet in person, and it's like they've been family, their entire lives, right? And I've never had that story. I meet them before 10 years because I need to know who I'm talking to. However, right, like there's so many stories of that kind of thing, right? Of the support that people get from each other in these party chats, right? Just playing the same game, right? All these different things. And I think that, on the flip side of that, right, we also know that, the contents of some of these games are definitely more M-rated and, things of that nature. And the conversations within playing that said game with other people can also be very, immature, right? Some words can be thrown around that are very hurtful and all these different things. And because, you're so comfortable behind your screen, I think that at times we've seen where kids are struggling with deciphering the fact that this is like one part of your life, and then this is like how it could have an effect in the other, right? Or just in the interpersonal. And so I've definitely been on both sides, you know what I mean? There's definitely been times where I'm like, all right, that was too far, right? That joke was too much, right? Anything like that. But again, I don't think it's ever taken away too much for me when it comes to really who that person is as a human being, because I've always been able to separate the fact that this is a part of my life, this is a part of me, right? And a certain part of me that, I've been able to learn to decipher when I bring that side out and when I don't, especially when I'm out in the real world. And I know that not everyone can do that, right? Like that's a tough thing to expect someone to be able to do. And it takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of, talking to yourself and asking yourself a whole lot of questions of, what does this mean for me? How is this landing for me? All these different things. And so I think just as my general thoughts on the topic, that's where I'll start there. But I love games. I'm a gamer, all kinds of games. I mean, I shout out my gamers out there if we have any, but I mean, everything from
lots of folks are tuning in.
Anything from the sports, anything from sports games, Madden, FIFA, 2K, which anyone can see me in, to the story games of, God of War, you name it, right? And then the Call of Duties of the world, of course. Gotta love Call of Duty. I mean, you can shake your head all you want. I'm a grown man, so I can really I can say what I want, right?
Absolutely.
That's the best part about this. Even when you're working with your mom, you kind of get to say whatever you want, and she can't really do anything about it because it's also being recorded. So, also, it's just one of those things where it's like, there's just so many pros and cons, and I so see both sides. And if anything, I'm really excited for this conversation because I want to know more about your side and a lot of how parents are thinking when it comes to when we introduce what. As far as like screen time, when we cut it off, right? All of these different things and your side of what that looks like. But shout out my gamers, man. I love my gamers. Literally gonna be playing video games after this episode. Like, it's definitely a big part of my life. And I want to know what the adults are thinking.
Yeah. I mean, all that was good and informative for me. So I am like so much to say. So for me, right? I'm gonna shout out the parents that know nothing about these video games. Shout out the parents that do, and shout out the parents or the adults who play them with their kids or with other young people, right? So for me, because I knew nothing, right? 2 sons and a niece, all in the same age range, even though there's a 6-year difference, right? I was trying to get a sense from them what games were about. And I'm thinking for your brother, we probably introduced game between 8 and 10, something around that range, but never, it was always sports. It just was never going to be anything else for me. Now, I recognize that as your kids get older, they go to other people's homes and other folk got different rules. So your kids get exposed to stuff that you don't want them to. But I think that's life, to be honest. Yeah. I think that's not just with video games. There's a whole lot of things that happens with. And so my husband and I also very much paying attention. Right. But y'all were happy with the games that you had. Y'all played them and played them and played them.
Still do.
Right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing for me. What we also had was, hey, y'all both like to actually play sports in real life. So get outside. We going outside. And what I loved about both you and your brother, you never said no. You were never so obsessed with the games that you didn't want to go outside and play. So for me, I think that's very healthy, that I'm willing to say, and your dad and I both, because he didn't play the video games either. I think we had like Pac-Man or something when we were growing up. Anyway, I didn't play that either. It didn't look stupid to me.
Pac-Man, oh my God.
I know, it looked really dumb. But hey, the early stages.
So far.
Yes, I'm sure you have. But the sports games looked interesting. You all tried to get me to play. I played a couple of times. It just isn't my thing.
That is true.
It's not my thing. I'd much rather be outdoors, or actually, even when we were indoors, you know me, it was like, y'all don't need to be on the system. We would set up chairs and our own homemade nets. And we would play volleyball in the living room, or we would do bowling in the living room. For me, first of all, family time. And second of all, it was about doing something that wasn't screen time. I'm also going to say this. What concerned me a lot about video games, since we weren't doing the violent ones, was, who said Madden? Shine with it. Madden. Okay.
Yes,
anyway, since we weren't doing the violent ones, y'all both would get so mad at the game and then throw down the controller. Who paid good money for the daggone controller? Like, I was like, what is this? Now, as an adult, you got your own money, but as kids, like, yo, what? You that mad and run screaming out the room? So for me, I know had that been me growing up, my mom would have been, I'm tossing that thing out and you will never see another one again. But I think the conversation is great. I'm going to take a look at the comments while Justin goes on and continue, because I want to see what y'all are saying about it. But I think that this is a great conversation, because it's also the place. Here's the thing. My parents out there, you know, our parents had their parents for their elder wisdom. We didn't have our parents for the elder wisdom when it comes to things like this. They didn't play video games. I know if I didn't play video games, first of all, my mom had passed before I became a mother, and my dad didn't play video games. He played outside, ball outside, right? So we didn't even have that wisdom to go, hey, I don't know anything about this. What about you? What do you think, right? And so finding your own wisdom on this and including your kids in the conversation, I think is critically important. And of course, looking at what it is that they're playing and deciding what you will and will not put as a boundary on it. And for us, the violence thing, wasn't having it. there's enough of it outside.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why do you think that was? Because it got so much to the point where whenever they were out of the house, we were playing a violent game because it's like, oh,
where'd you get it?
You're asking the wrong questions. We would play a violent game, and like it would be one of those like, yo, watch the door, like let me know.
In
like,
real life, in real time, this is happening.
Let me know.
I don't know.
Like,
I didn't know this.
Let me know when you hear the door, because we know like from the cadence of how our parents open the door. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know which parent is coming home, right? So we would know if you were coming home. It's like, oh, like code red, turn that off, switch it to something else.
Wow.
Because it got so much to the point where you guys were not with that, right? There was no GTA in my house. There was no Call of Duty in my house, and we still found a way to like do our thing. So like, what
on the side?
Like,
okay. So
what about it like made it so?
So parents,
let's not do
I'm
that.
gonna say teach your kids not to be sneaky, but I was sneaky as a kid. So but
yeah,
wow,
that's crazy.
Wow. Okay, what about it? Because I figured that there would be a time when you would get to that place of violent. And on top of it, you both love sports. It's something you participated in. You knew all the players, and as video games progressed and they got bigger, and all of these things, the graphics got better, and you were all very excited about it. So for me, I think that was good enough. True. I truly didn't feel like you needed to be sitting in front of a screen shooting people. I just didn't see the need in that, the necessity in that, when there were other options out there that you could truly enjoy.
I like it. And I think that also showed up in, every other aspect of like media, right? Of what y'all like were not patrolling, but really just like, being careful of what we consumed in the sense of the music we listened to, in the sense of the shows we watched, right? Like, and I think that's kind of what influenced us into being a little sneaky, right? Because we always like had this feeling that we were, both my brother and I like had this feeling that we were just like a little more mature than our age. And, I think that looking back, I think that's honestly just a really good way to decipher feeling from like reality of like, yeah, you feel like an old soul, but like you're also still 10, right? And like this is where your brain's at, right? And so I think that's very real. I think that's very real. I think that's very true. And in the same breath, I think that some of those more violent games, if we want to put it out like that, right? I think that they've helped me with some of the more like tough things in life, right? So I feel like, to be quite frank, I wouldn't be able to deal with a bully that well had I not played something like a Call of Duty or a GTA, right? Grand Theft Auto, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, because like the contents of it are more mature and more whatever. And kids are just sponges. They're absorbing every single thing that they hear, that they think is correct, that they think it right, and they're spewing it back out there. And so I can say for a fact, Madden or 2K is not what helped me be able to like stand up to a bully or something like that. I'm pretty sure we had someone who said something in the comments. Gordon, my dog Gordon, shout out you, bro. You had said that it helped you approach other areas of your life, right? And with less, probably less nervousness or less, inkling of not wanting to take that step, right? Because video games opened you up to the fact that, wow, maybe if I'm playing this, right, and I'm tough enough to play this, and I'm, able to get through it, like I can do this in another area of my life. And so I think that when we talk about screen time, when we talk about all of these things, yes, that's where the balance part comes out and what we need, because we were always, kids first. Like we were always loved outside. We loved being in nature. We loved going on walks. We loved throwing the ball around for hours. We love, like, that's who we have always been. We still are that way now as grown men. And we also know, like, we need our game. Like we need to be able to decompress with our game. And especially with, as you said, like getting there to that point in life where life is just going to throw you the more mature things and the more adult things that you're going to have to do anyway. I think gaming in a lot of ways for adults is kind of like stepping back into that kid mode for them, right? Like it's kind of like not reliving, but it's reigniting in a lot of ways of the kid in you, because I think, to be quite frank, the adult world tries to honestly kill the spirit of child, right? It's like, do this, do that. Don't complain about it. There's no need to be, doing all this childish stuff, right? I like even going outside and taking care of yourself, right? And our game is, I think, one of those first, real entry points that I think a lot of more people universally are comfortable with saying, yeah, like that's really something where I feel like, I'm a kid again. I'm tapping back into that part of me. And I think when we talk about generational perspectives, I think that, to be quite frank, there are a lot of kids who, like they do both, go outside, play video games, right? But there is more of an imbalance, I think, personally.
I do too.
And I think that there's just less like want or inkling or whatever to go outside and run around with your friends, to, really just like, even play manhunt. I haven't heard kids playing manhunt or even just saying like we played manhunt at night all the time in the past like 10 years or something. And I'm 23.
Right.
So it's like manhunt days, even though I'm 23, were like really like yesterday for me, because that's how much I was outside. That's how much, especially in my neighborhood, I was doing that. And so I think that we need to have way more of a conversation around the balance piece.
Yeah.
And also in a way, though, that's not, I believe someone said in the comments, where it's like you're not weaponizing their right to playing a video game against them.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't go outside, or you didn't do your chores, no games for a week. Oh, you didn't. And what if that child, right, struggles in, I guess, the real world, right? What if they struggle making friends? What if they struggle, approaching school with that same kind of like, I'm here to learn something attitude? And that game may not be the only thing, but one of the main things that they know stamped works for them.
Yep.
Taking that away and weaponizing that against them, I think on the parental side is where stuff can get maybe not dangerous, but unsafe for that child in a emotional sense, in a spiritual connection sense, right? Of really just like what feeds them, and honestly being able to say, this is what feeds me, right? Like having the voice to say those things. And so,
or it relaxes you. I know a lot of people say that.
Like it really does. Like I hear the beep of my PlayStation and the world's okay again. Like it may seem like dark, but I just hear the beep and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Like, it's just one of those things where for me, it's kind of like, no one can tell me anything. It's mine, it's mine, and it feels great, and, it's cool. And I think that kids are just a lot more in tune with themselves at younger ages than adults think. So yes, put parameters, put boundaries. Let's talk about the boundaries. Let's talk about the parameters we need to put around them. And even if the rules are different, even if you do want to expose your kids to something more violent earlier on and, show them first, kind of like, this is what you're growing into. That's another way to go about it, which we've seen and we've grown up seeing.
Yes. Other people have.
Other people for sure, right? That's the whole reason we were sneaking like games around and stuff. However, I think kids know themselves, and I think kids know what's feeding them and who's feeding them, and at ages that are only getting smaller. And
well, how did you feel about, I know you said you snuck it, right? But how did you feel about us saying, only sports?
Thought it was trash.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I thought it was trash. I mean, I personally thought I was always like more mature than my age. I always have felt that way.
Yeah, we had a brother who's 6 years older than you, who included you in a lot of stuff too.
Well, that has a lot to do with it. That's also, I think I'm just like that person. I think I'm just one of those people. So like, I don't really, like I take that as like a factor, but I don't really take that as like a attributing factor per se, because I could do that with other older kids that weren't my brother, right? And so I think that it was always a part of me, and I think kids are naturally just looking left, looking right, seeing who has what, seeing who has access to what.
Yes.
So earlier on, growing up in private school, these kids get to do whatever they want, but like they were playing the games that early. They were having friends over to play that game that early. They were getting the new drop every time, regardless of the price, and all these different things. And I think that's where the like anger or like annoyance or whatever really came from, probably just like the looking left, looking right, and comparing myself as naturally us humans do, but we really do them as kids. And I think looking back though, like, you know, because it's always easier to look in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I didn't get to play all of those games growing up. I don't, you know, I really did value still going outside. You know what I mean? When I was in 8th grade even, and I was still a gamer or whatever, right? But I valued still like basketball practice, like going to practice, playing hard, like all these different things. Like I valued those things. And I think that, you know, for a lot of other kids who were on the opposite side, who were exposed to some of those things earlier, they didn't have that same like, you know, want, drive, whatever, especially when they were getting all of the stuff they wanted when they wanted it. So I like now the fact that y'all were like, no, like that's your friends, but that's not here. And I think that attributes to video game, right? The stepping into different worlds. Like I know when I'm in my gaming world and I'm in my headset and all these different things, and I'm talking to even friends that I'm friends with in real life, we're bringing our gaming selves out. Right. And when we're in real life, you know, the same jokes maybe aren't as flying as at the same rate, right? Because we're in person, like talking to each other, and, you know, we have context for other areas of our lives. And so I just think in hindsight, you guys definitely made the right choice, especially for me. And I also know for a fact, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it when I'm a parent. Like, I just don't know. Right. I know like the pros and cons to both. However, we just got to see when that approaches me, how I'm going to handle it. But I hope that answers your question a little bit.
It was great. Now, I want to show this because I'm going to show this comment because it helps what you were saying, right? I think, and Jacob Waters, thank you for being a new viewer. And I know you said you had to go, but thank you for subscribing to YouTube. I think there are studies that show now that gaming increases your hand-eye coordination and gamers make better surgeons. I didn't know that. But just like everything else in the world, it can be overdone. Yeah, thank you,
That's
Jacob.
very true. They do. They really, really do.
That's
the
awesome.
Hand-eye coordination and all is really what, like a lot of surgeons play video games. A lot of surgeons play video games.
I love that. Well, I want to talk just a little bit about my generation. And Andrea, you did not say Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong. Oh my gosh.
Hey, way back.
Wow.
Way back. But hey, anyway, again, I did not grow up with it. Yes, these things came out, the Pac-Man and the Donkey Kong or whatever. But I didn't play any of that. I was a what was I? I was a creative. I went to dance school and voice lessons, and I wrote plays and movies, and I would rather do anything creative than have to sit down in front of a screen and play something. As it was, my parents had us inside way too much when we weren't doing things like that. We were not the ones who actually were. We could go outside to play. I shouldn't say that, but you know, not the way that other kids could, particularly as we got into the teen years, whatever. But I really didn't. It just wasn't my thing. I had enough screen time with TV. I just didn't want to sit in front of anything and play. And you know, most of my friends didn't play, maybe the guys, but not anybody else. So for me, it was a very different world to be exposed to. I'm happy that I was exposed to it through you all. And I actually would get excited in your excitement when the new basketball games came out and it's like, oh mom, this player is actually in it, and you know,
we still are like that at,
yes,
at 23 and 29. Like, it's insane.
But I love that. I love that it's a bonding thing. I mean, just this Thursday, the holiday day of giving thanks, you and your cousin in the room playing, what was it, FIFA?
Shout out my FIFA heads. That's soccer. One of the most stressful games in the world, and it's just a relief for me. But oh my gosh.
So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about, you love the positives. You're down with the positives. Yeah. So let's throw a positive up there, a few positives up there for folks.
Cool. So my first pro and how it's helping video games are helping children improve problem solving skills and logic. You quite literally, to get to the next level, have to use your brain, right? You got to use your critical thinking skills, right? And on top of that, as the levels get harder, the more of your brain you're going to have to use. And so I think this is just good as far as not only a base rate skill to have, however, it's also going to challenge, your ability to handle different situations. And honestly, with the perseverance piece, I love how even with Donkey Kong, Andrea, you had said, it taught you to never give up, right? It taught you to, all right, well, I got to jump at this time with this barrel. And for the next one, with the flaming one, I got to make sure I move to this spot to line my jump up for the next one, so that all of these different things in which you wouldn't get from level 1, right? So I think that all of those skills and the practice of that skill, it adds up. It really does. And the more challenging games that you play, that's where the story stuff comes in. That's where the single player games come in, right? Where you got to take over some sort of castle or reign of whatever.
Okay.
It comes into how do I approach this enemy? How do I approach that enemy? How do I if I'm losing 10 times, right, it means clearly I'm doing something wrong. Clearly my approach is not effective in this manner, right? And changing up the game plan, right, which also only helps with perseverance. So I think that, all of these things just they add up at the end of the day. And I really think they show up in different areas of your life.
Well, to me, that makes sense. I mean, look, I said I don't play them, but I really do feel like from what I've seen, from what I watched, there absolutely are good skills that are being learned through it. And the problem solving sounds perfectly right in logic. So I think that if that's what's happening, then more power to them.
Yeah. And a lot of great comments.
We got a
lot of great comments. Levi, you're definitely right. A lot of mature material in these games, for sure, in which taking those breaks are definitely very, very important. Having balance, I think that's the entire point. And yeah, Andrea, shout out Madison, right? Who said, video games has brought her incredibly close to her friends, right?
So cool.
Me too. I know for me, there were times where playing that game next to my boy really just helped me wake up the next day, a little more excited to attack the day, a little more, just out of my head and feelings and all these different things. And then on the game too, we're talking, we're having these real conversations. It's not just spewing out, garbage to each other. We're going there, right? That's why guys or people end up playing for hours at a time, right? Because the conversation goes from so many different things, laughs, cries, and everything in between. So I think, big shout out my gamers. Y'all really know what I'm talking about. Keep helping me. Keep helping me. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Next, enhance pro-social behaviors. This, I think video games has really helped me and so many people out there with honestly being able to approach people, to approach conversations, to lead a conversation, to even share a point in which on a topic that might be uncomfortable to talk about. I really do think that, especially through the collaboration piece, even if you are playing against each other, right, you're still collaborating in a activity together.
Okay.
Conversations are going to come up, right? You're going to get asked well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And, well, this is what you think about it. Where do we go from there, right? And all of these different things. So many conversations under the sun. And so I think at the end of the day, when you turn those systems off, right, I think you're just feeling more, comfortable in not only what you feel and where you're at with what you feel, right, but also being able to possibly talk about it one day. And that's not to say every social interaction needs to be what you're feeling about politics or what you're feeling about the current state of the world, right? No, it's really just about your ability to maybe float that room a little more, right? You're wanting to go out and be around people and have these kinds of conversations in real time, in real life, not behind a screen. Your ability to kind of read honestly when people are lying to you, when people are spewing something that you don't agree with, something that's damaging, right? I think that a lot of the unhealthy stuff that comes with video gaming and why there needs to be balance is that people have taken into account the fact that they are behind a screen,
right?
No one's in the room with them, so they can say whatever they want and have no consequence for it.
Yeah.
Whereas when you think about it in this way, it's like all of these things are connected, right? Like all of these things are really just like a web of how we end up functioning in the world. And so your ability to decipher, right? Like kind of when someone's just spewing out stuff and when, you know, there's like, oh, like you really like sat with that and like thought about that, right? I think gaming for me has definitely been able to decipher and sniff out BS, to be quite frank, because, you know, you can kind of feel people's intentions, you know, even through the words that they say, but then add the fact that they're a person. We have visceral reactions when we lie or tell the truth or whatever. It makes you just more wanting to approach that in real life. It makes you want to step into that room a little more in real life. So, I mean, I think gaming has really made me the social guy that I am, to be quite frank.
That's interesting. Well, all I know is it get heated sometimes. It does get heated, but you know what? So does outside. Seen that many times too. So it's another activity that you all are involved in. I love what you just said. So I'm good with that. I'm good. We got a comment. Let's see.
100% agree. Shout out Levi.
All right, Levi.
You know what's going on. Help me out, Levi. Got a whole lot of adults.
I think Andrea, they're all on your side. To me.
I'm not reading all these comments, to be perfect. We got a lot of engagement. Appreciate y'all. I was making sure I get my notes out because, you know.
Jen is out there.
Yes.
They all feel like.
Shout out Donkey Kong and
balance,
Nintendo.
Balance.
You know, we're all about that to this day. No, we still play Mario Kart.
Oh my God.
We still play Mario Kart, still play. It's just a revamped version.
Okay.
I guess. So,
all right. Lord, I don't know what time it is.
Not calling nobody old. Just help me out. And then lastly, relief from stress. Now, I know, I want to be very clear. Controllers have been broken.
Yes.
Yes.
Even as adults.
Yes. Control. I don't run from my truth. Controllers have been broken many a time. Maybe up until the point of 2 weeks ago. Now, as far as the relief from stress, I think this is so real, right? I really am going to double down on especially for a lot of adults, right? Tapping back into that children's spirit, right? Like the thing that like just made them extra excited to want to get home and put their stuff down and just do what they want to do and play what they want to play. I really think that is just so stress relieving. Now, even in the most stressful of games that I play, it's not even necessarily if I win the game or not, if the game's going my way or not. It's I'm in my own space. I got my headset on, got my music on, right? It's like I've just I've stepped into another world, a world that feels comfortable, a world that feels familiar, a world that even in the meeting of new people and all these things, you know, no one can tell you, you know, how to play your game, when to play your game, all these different things. It's your game, it's your world, it's your time, and especially your time to relieve stress. And if that's how you want to do it, playing a game of Madden, playing a game of Call of Duty, playing whatever you want to play, God of War, Black Myth, whatever it is, that's my choice. That's my relief, and it works, right? Even in the most stressful of what it is, it works because I'm still going to play that game the next day. So it's just one of those things where I think for me, and for so many other people, I don't necessarily tell people like, you know, in your struggles of like mental health, like, yeah, go play your game for 6 hours. Like that'll get it done. Like, no, not really, or not every person. However, who's to say that, you know, a couple hours isn't helping that person, right? That's really up to them to decipher and, you know, yes, put parameters and boundaries, but also respect and hear the fact that, you know, maybe this game is doing something for me deeper than you think, right? And I think that a lot of gamers can definitely relate to that. So I would say it's a good release from stress.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to ask that particularly if you're a professional, right, trying to assess the ways for a young person to relieve stress, I think it's important for you to ask them if that's something that does, and not decide that no, let's get you away from that. We got to find something else, right? Unless it's really detrimental to them. But if they're telling you that even an hour can help them relieve stress, then keep it on the list. Let them try it out. I think that's I think that's important. So,
and Levi, I love this.
what are you saying?
Better community online than in bars. Better to fight in games than in streets. I
Wow.
mean,
Wow,
to be
Levi,
quite frank,
that's quite true.
that's very real. You know, that's why you got, you know, fighting games from boxing to MMA to all these different things, right? You know, all of these things are planned. All of these things are produced off of data, right? Especially how humans respond to interacting with each other. And I think that that's a very good point. You know, I'd much rather say, you know, run it in fight night than like run it outside, right? Or run it in this game than like, you know, run it whatever. And I know for a fact that, you know, video games have stopped certain acts of violence that could have been, you know, really bad, right? Or just certain environments where, you know, things are getting heated and whatever. But it's like, no, let's turn on this game and, you know, let's just all relax for a minute, and, you know, ends up being perfectly fine right after. So I think that's a really, really good one, Levi. Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right. So parents, considerations, right? If you're thinking about this, especially if you're like me and it's new to you, or even if it isn't, right? And maybe you're having conflict with your kids over this stuff, because that can happen too. And I do want to say, by the way, that it is not just my sons that throw the controllers. When I've had to go buy controllers, they tell you at the store, yeah, this is the one thing that we sell out of a lot, because people are always breaking their controllers, and usually it's because they're throwing them at something. So, not at someone, but at something, the wall, whatever. So it's a common thing.
We're all working in real time. So like, yes.
It's a common thing. All right. What is age appropriate according to you? I think that's just
a great question.
So important.
That's a great question.
You get to decide, parents, but you really do need to think about it. I do not believe that it should be, oh, but all my friends have it. Okay, well, that was never good with my parents. And y'all, if you've been watching this show, you know I do a lot of things different from my parents. So it isn't just like, well, because they did it, I do it. That one, I'm with. No, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you're going to. Can we have a conversation about that? Yeah, we can. But you have to decide, is my child, first of all, old enough? And second of all, mature enough? Because you know age is none but a number. So they might be 10, but are they acting 5? You know, or even that's 7?
Yeah.
And this might not be. So you may want to test something out on them, with them, that may not be so controversial for you, and see if you can do it that way.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. You know, there's also those kids who are like 8 who act 14, which is why they might, you know, be able to play those games early, right? So I think it's really just like, it's not a one size fits all thing at all. I really don't. So really just like, you know, sit with yourself, sit with your children, right? Have a conversation. I can always remember, even if you landed on what you landed on, like, you'd still hear us out. Even if our point was, well, this kid has it, and this, it's like, well, that's not good enough. Like, you know, like, there was always conversation in our household that I can, you know, really say has always helped our dynamic. But you can land on what you land on, right? But, you know, definitely hear the kid out, you know, let them show you what they're showing you, and, you know, just move from there. So I think that's a really, really great question.
The second is, what parameters do you want to set up? Now, it can be in conversation with your child, your children, but I think you should think about it before you come to the conversation, if you're deciding that it's going to be with them. I mean, I feel like young people always have a lot of wisdom, and certainly you all did. And for us, it came in your brother being so much older, him starting out, right? So how did that go? And then you coming behind, not necessarily going, well, you're going to get to play this because. And I think the thing about not doing the violent games helped your cause, because it wasn't like we had to say, well, you can't play with your brother because now he's playing Call of Duty because he's old enough to do that. Right. It was just like, yep, you love sports, he loves sports, yes, you can play. The bigger thing was that you really felt like you should have been able to win more, and you were so much younger, and he had been doing it for so much longer. So it created that kind of tension. But why shouldn't you all understand how conflict can break out and how to resolve it. But woo, those were some interesting ones.
You guys see how triggered I am right now just by like how real that is? Shout out my younger siblings. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about because they would love to brag about it before the parent gets into the room. So yes. But I also remember my first day beating him ever, and that's like, oh, that was yesterday. It was so,
that was a great feeling, right?
Feeling.
Yes. So I think what are the parameters? They don't have to play everything. Are there things that they really can like? And also, what are the parameters around how much time they get to do that? Because in all honesty, there are some kids where this is their whole world. There are some parents, I've met parents along the way when you all were coming up who were just so concerned about the obsession that their child had with video games.
And those kids struggled socially. It was just an imbalance. It's not like they weren't able to do what they did in the real world, right? And make friends and all these things, but there was just an imbalance. There was definitely an imbalance.
But some of them weren't able to make friends too, and that's the other thing. And certainly since COVID, the tendency to isolate has been so huge. And yes, you have an online community, but what about offline? What about outside? What are the other things that your child is involved in? And I will say also around parameters, are you though? Have you overbooked them outside? Right? Maybe they need the video game to release, as you said, some tension because they're doing so much outside of the home. It could be a thing of comfort within their home too. So really looking at what are the parameters you want to have set up and thinking about that ahead of the conversation with them. Whether you're going to decide for them or in conversation with them, have the ideas in your head.
Yeah, COVID was a really, really great point. I feel like the entire world, adults included, right, like was gaming, right? So that's a really, really great point. Yes, except for you.
Yes. And watch them play sometimes or play with them online. I really did try. It just, you did
a lot more watching.
I never got good at it, so that frustrated me. But
I
did try.
You were good at the Wii Sports.
The Wii Sports.
We did Wii Sports as a family.
We did.
You were very good.
That was fun.
You could bowl on Wii Sports a little bit. You didn't have the curve on the shot like we did, but she could get a strike here and there. We had Wii parties.
You're right.
You did it.
I did. I did not want to just say, well, it's not something that I grew up with, or well, y'all just go ahead and do that on your own. I really wanted to experience some of it and try it. And frankly, I wanted to see what was the fascination, because as I said, I knew it wasn't just kids. I knew that there were adults who really did love playing video games. And I just wanted to get a sense of it. But I encourage you to do that. And maybe you already play, because everybody didn't grow up in my time. Maybe you already play. But hopefully you play with them sometimes, because I know they may not always want to play with you. You may not always want to play with them. I know adults who are, in their 40s who are like, I like to sit down by myself and play. And they have kids, right? And it's just like, it's a way to unwind. It's a way to just kind of veg out from everything else that's happening. But play with them sometimes and learn about the games and learn about, I have to be honest, all I heard about Call of Duty was that it was violent. I didn't bother to find out, like, what is this that you do until later on. I definitely know that you were like late teens when I actually sat down with somebody who showed me what it was and how to play. And I think my decision would have still been the same. But I do encourage you not to do that. I encourage you to not just go, no, absolutely not. It's violent. No, like, check it out. Find out what you may not have to play it to find out. You can read up about it. Ask other people who do play it, and then see how that sits with you, and see if maybe you would at some point say, okay, when you get to be this age, right? We didn't do that. I don't think they turned out badly. I think that, especially since they were sneaking it now that we know that. I know that. But
At least we weren't like sneaking alcohol.
I was
or, like,
right.
Like that. You know what
That's
I mean?
right.
Like,
Or sneaking out, and
right.
I kind of did a little bit of that. So
So yeah, like
yeah.
you know,
So
yeah,
yes,
that's real
but
though.
yeah, but that's what
That's
I
real.
think. Yeah.
That's real. And I so some just final thoughts. I so appreciate that you didn't stop there, and that you also knew when to say like, all right, I'm good on that. You know what I mean? Like you didn't compromise yourself
Right.
in finding out really like how video games work in our lives and landing in us, right? You also know it's not your thing. So I just appreciate that approach to it. And I know that's definitely going to be my approach to it, when it's my turn to be a parent, right? And I still stand on that. I don't know when I'm going to introduce what and whatever, because we also know as the world's forever moving, forever evolving, forever changing, who knows what games are going to look like in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You already have VR, which puts you in
Virtual reality.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
puts you in these like,
I
and that's a crazy concept in itself to me alone, right? I think Iron Man when I think of that, or like something like that.
But it's used for so many other things.
So many other things, working out, all these other things, right? So when we talk about the role of tech and that, gaming and those interactive things too, like the role that's going to play. I think that these are serious questions to ask specifically of yourself, but also to have a conversation with your children who actually are going to be, doing that stuff and honestly might know more about that stuff than you do. Right. So there is a level of trust that's like, tough to achieve when it just comes to like, just trust me. Right. Like that's tough to just like land on and be like, all right, well, we're good now. I trust you. Right. Especially when it comes to the development of your child. Right. And I think, from also all the things they've shown you, they know themselves. They know themselves. It's about really just like the language that they're developing to really feel even more solidified in, that they are on their own journey. And so, I appreciate the fact that, I was always had a balance, right? I always was told, go outside, and I love to go outside and things like of that nature. I so appreciate the friends that I've made. Shout out Andrea, shout out Madison. I think y'all definitely agree with me. I'll second your point of the community that I've created from gaming. Some of these friends are still here from 6th grade, right? Even if I went to school with them and whatever, right? It's like that could be our main way of like keeping up with each other, right? It's like I can't really hop on the phone with you for 2 hours like I used to, but I've got 30 minutes to go play zombies real quick. What are we doing, right? And that's how we'll keep up. So I know there's just so many pros and honestly so many cons to it that balance is, as we say with every topic, but really this one, balance is for sure the one thing that is going to help you continue to have these conversations, right? Because you're going to land at different places at different times. So be honest with yourself, let your children be honest with you, and just see what happens, see what comes from that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this has been great for me to hear you talk about it, and I know how much you love it.
We'll play after this.
There's a couple of points that I want to bring up one thing we didn't bring up as parents. I understand that these games are expensive. These systems are expensive, and that's a problem. That can create real conflict in your home. But if you look at it as an opportunity to really work with your child or children around, okay, so then you're in this household, we're not spending $200, $300, $400, $500, all right, by ourselves as parents, or you're going to have to contribute. So let's figure out how you do that, whether people still do allowance, whether they get a little job, something, working, doing something. I don't mean they have to go work at McDonald's. They may not be old enough to, but they can figure out some way to say, okay, I'm going to contribute to that too, because they need to understand that's a huge investment especially in households where that money can go to something else vital, like rent or food, clothes. That, hey, I think it's really important for that point to be made, that's a conversation. And that's my second point. All of this is a conversation. If this is a point of conflict in your home, then you need to really be talking about it. Video games are not going anywhere. They're not going away anytime soon. And the tech is getting better and better, and they're being used for a lot more things.
Yeah, absolutely. That was good stuff. I appreciated your points.
Thank you.
All of it. The COVID part too. I don't know how that slipped my mind. Everyone, I feel like the entire world was on some sort of console, or I don't know. But
I was with the TV.
yeah, a lot of people on TV.
But
right?
Screen time. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So if you enjoyed this episode, please catch us on e360tv.com, Trajectory Channel, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV. Got some more licenses coming out for y'all. You tell them the thing.
Oh, no.
Watch us on your big screen.
Watch us on your big screen.
That's your line.
That is true. I did it. I watched this on a big screen last week.
Cool.
It's very cool.
Facebook.com, Working It Out TV show. YouTube, Working It Out Across Generations.
Thank you for our new YouTube viewers.
Absolutely. We say all the time, every like, every follow, every view, every subscription, every share, all of these things add up. Small is all is the way we live life. We try to do the small things because they add up to the big things. So thank you so much for any and everyone who has ever rocked with us and will continue to rock with us. You know what we say at the end of our show. Conflict is here to teach you something about yourself. So go out there and find out what it is. I'm Justin.
And I am Dr. Lynne. And thank you for your comments and for joining us today, live or at the replay.
Awesome. See you guys next week.
Bye.